if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer. Yes?
Sorry, so you said on the napkins that they're all silk screen?
Yeah.
How did you silk screen 2,000 napkins?
One by one.
Really?
Well, like I could set up more than one on my screen.
Okay.
So I would just... It took a little bit of time, mostly because I couldn't really tape down the silk screens, because if you tape them down, when you take the tape, then you rip the napkin. So I had to devise sort of like, what are they called? Registration marks with tape, so just the napkin wouldn't slide down. But it was sort of like a project in between projects.
Yeah.
So it was just a way for me to go in the studio and make this kind of repetitive action.
Did it ever get any publicity at all?
No, I don't think so. No, I just gave them, well, not give them away, but left them behind, sort of, or gave them out at opening. So
you said the Freedom Fighters manual had 17 pages?
17.
And they're all in there?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, the last page was blank?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's reproduced in its entirety. So like from page 1 to like the last page, which is just a blank page. Are there any other questions?
How do you need this description with your previous work? What do you mean with disruption? I don't really understand this word.
Disruption is like, how do you translate disruptions into French? It's like, yeah, it's like causing a disruption. It's like moving something out of place in a way. So like the video is all about, there are temporal disruptions in the way that you would see something happen in, a few seconds before and a few seconds after, and there is spatial disruptions in the way that you would see it from different angles, and also, obviously the physical disruption of moving things around the library, and the video is meant to reflect a book in a way, like two-screen sort of.
There's a kind of book, actually.
Yeah, there's a part where there's a book, I'm flipping pages.
Have you always worked at minimally like this?
I think so. Yeah.
So from very early on, you started working like this?
I was always drawn to that kind of aesthetic, but I think that you always have to be sort of, not, how do you say that word, suspicious of your own sort of impulses. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking why, I like this, and then started researching more about it, and then to the point that it would become part of my work, and it would become also, a study of minimalism, and it's not only in critique that I do it in admiration. I love, I think it was a really great movement in many ways, and it was fairly radical for many reasons. So it's, it's an admiration, but it's also in critique. And what I'm thinking about with that last sculpture is obviously not to do something like complete it, but to use it as a stage for, carry on the things that I feel like maybe didn't do, or maybe it could have, pushed further. Because I think like minimalism was great for to make us think about our bodies in the exhibition, and thinking about the viewer as a physical body moving through space. But for minimalism, it was just any kind of body. It didn't have a gender, or it didn't locate it in history or language or anything like that. And it should, it's not any kind of viewer that works in the exhibition, but we all have different backgrounds and different genders, and so.
Do you give any kind of institutional critique in your work?
I do. I wouldn't say exactly how, or I don't know exactly how, but I mean, I definitely admire, I know Michael Asher just passed away actually. I definitely admire a lot of these people, Hans Hack, obviously, for example, and yeah, sort of their impulse, or their contribution to our history. I don't know if that answers the question.
Opens up other questions.
It does. It does. Are there any other questions? I'm really interested in this idea of, I read it somewhere, I can't remember where I read it, but it's called wild knowledge. So for me, it's not so much with this type of work about delivering a meaning, but it's more about sort of excavating a meaning or setting a platform for meanings to unfold. So wild knowledge, like I'm not interested in simply translating my research into work, but drawing from my personal experience, my intuition, research, poetry, fiction, and then creating a space for that, for something to happen. And hopefully when I'm finished, I can, look and, learn from it, or, look at things that I couldn't have possibly imagined happening.
You seem to have very strong political views of your work, and just very strong lessons that you want to say to people. So why not use your napkin idea? I don't know, something repetitive like that. Kind of go big, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How come you don't use that in your work or explore that as much?
Explore what exactly, sorry?
Repetition, I guess.
Well, I do use a lot of repetition in my work. And then, I know that there's definitely a political interest in my work. For the most part, I try not to be too clear about it, or, I like that kind of ambiguity that visual art has, and, that it can stage a platform for, not to tell somebody something, but just to propose something. So, for example, this installation, all the objects and everything in the show would be red. And, I'm using the color the way that you would pin a red square in your clothes, but not as clear as that, So, from, it's hard to see, but from from these things to those things, everything in the show would be red. But so it's more vague for me, in a way.
Just one last question. I'm really interested in your use of citation. You almost seem to use minimalism as a citation, and use libraries as a citation in your work, but it is sort of rendered ambiguous, and you can't really see that. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that, if that's a reality for you. Or
I think it is. It's a really interesting question. I mean,
excuse me, can you just explain citation? What is that? Citation. Oh, okay.
yeah, when you quote something in a way, like quotation. I do that quite a bit. I think it's for me to have different kind of layers in the work, and not just being about one thing, but to have but multiple references within it. So for me, it's important that that there's enough space for somebody who wants to spend a few minutes with it, or somebody who wants to stay longer, and then maybe follow the references. And so there'll be references to books or to stories. Maybe I'll go back to this to explain it a little bit better. Now, this one is really far-fetched, but you're welcome. So, for example, on this, it was supposed to be 9 dictionaries, but I left the last one black. The reason why I did it was the last language was supposed to be Bengali, which is the 6th most popular language in the world. But it was ironic for me that in the whole 26 library consortium in Halifax, there's not a single Bengali dictionary. So I decided to replace it with another dictionary and sort of withhold the answer. The answer would be found through the call number. So if you look up the call number in the library, then you can see what dictionary it is. And the reason, I chose a specific dictionary to replace it with, which was, it was another German dictionary. And to me, it seemed not only historical relevant, but it was the time that Angela Merkel said that, you know, the idea of multicultural Germany failed, and that all the immigrants should learn the language and should incorporate into the culture. So I just, you know, put that one instead of Bengali. So some people would see that, but some people would become curious about why, it's right here, why that one is black and what is that language. And hopefully for me, if somebody becomes that interested, they will write down the call number and look it up, and then, you know, maybe think about why I use that other dictionary. So some of them are like, you know, it's, I like this idea of giving a kind of post life to it, maybe, or, you know, just living sort of like little games or little clues behind. And
Okay.
thank you for coming.